questions that typically I see, and I'm kind of looking at some of the questions that have been asked, of course, as well. What happens if the file essentially falls apart and there's no collection on it? And there's a couple of answers to that. Number one, the files that I fund using this particular account, which is where people's money goes, is on the files where that should not happen. And it should not happen simply because there's no liability or fault issue involved. In other words, it's very clear that the party that we're suing is at fault for the accident and is at fault for injuring the person. It's just a question of how much money they ultimately get. And as long as we get a dollar for their injury, the disbursements are going to be repaid by the insurer because they have to be by law. So we know that the money that comes out of this bank account is funded by this bank account is always going to files that are always going to collect the disbursement money back. So it doesn't happen. It hasn't happened as of yet. But theoretically, anything's possible. If for some reason some file did fall apart, there's two answers to that. Number one, nobody's money is specifically directed to a specific file. It's, as I say, it's a money coming into a fund that's in this bank account, which then disperses the funds out. So if one file were, as an example, to collapse and it had 20, 30,000 disbursements of it, it's a pretty small drop in the bucket compared to the hundreds of thousands of dollars that are flowing in from other files at any given one time. So it's not like it would impact anybody, quite frankly. But the third answer to that, which is probably the most important one, of course, is that there is insurance on files. All the files are protected by, at least the files that I disperse funds on from this bank account, they're all protected by what we call after the event insurance, which is a relatively new product. It's only been on the market for a couple of years, but it actually protects the disbursements so that even if the disbursements are not collected back from the insurer for some reason, the insurance company will pay those disbursements to me. And therefore I would get the disbursement money back that way. So it should be virtually impossible for any of these files to have a situation where the money is not returned or refunded at the end of the day.